right, y'all. So, welcome to the show here. And today it's actually going to be a little bit of a different kind of pace here, because what I'm going to do is I've kind of, Tony Robbins calls this net time, which stands for no extra time. And basically, what I felt called to do was, part of what I wanted to do today was create an outline, or I call it a business/life brainstorm, where essentially I'm in this process, and this is kind of the design work. Being an entrepreneur, the more that I'm really leaning into that role, the more I'm realizing that it's not about you doing the work. And really my role as an entrepreneur, and if you're an entrepreneur, if you're listening to this, or you aspire to be an entrepreneur, or that's how you label yourself, your job isn't to do the job. Your job is to design the system, design the framework to be able to create opportunities for other people to do the work, and other people to do the work that they love to do. And so often, we have these good intentions, and we will start a business, and we'll find ourselves doing everything because it's just in our nature. We there's a problem, we figure it out, and we do what we got to do to solve the shit. And in the beginning, it's just what you got to do. Like, it's just you. But as things continue to grow, and as you continue to grow, you have to have the knowingness and the courage, really, to step away from the purely just taking action on things and just doing the work. So for instance, for me, being a coach and being the owner of Optimal Evolution, it's designing what that business looks like so that I can eventually remove myself from the business. And it's not to say that I'm not going to do the work, but it's to say I don't need to do the work, because systems are in place, people are in place, everything is already in place for the business to run by itself. And really, by definition, that's when you actually own a business, is when the business doesn't need you anymore. Anything other than that, if you are still needed in the business, or in other words, if you left and shit would fall apart, then you still have a job. Which again, it's not wrong, it's not bad, but it's just noticing what stage that you're in, and knowing and getting clear on where it is that you are actually supposed to be. Cheers. Got our bag here. A little tobacco, get you right, get you, I find the tobacco helps me to, it's like this relaxed, alert, focused, with a little bit of like a euphoric kind of feel to it. So it's nice. I enjoy tobacco. That's another discussion. So, as I said, what we're going to do is I'm essentially going to walk you through my processing of how I'm thinking, and really the things that I'm working on right now. Because I already had planned to do a design session today, and a good book to study. I've been studying Mike Michalowicz quite a bit lately. I really love his material, his approach, and he has a book called Clockwork, where essentially he breaks down the process of how to clockwork your business, or how to get your business to run like clockwork, which essentially is what it sounds like, putting all the pieces in place so that you can remove yourself from the business. And part of that framework, he actually gives you a framework of percentages of how much time should you be allocating to different aspects of your life. So there's like I forget exactly all the terms that he used, but there's certain time to actually be doing the work. There's certain time allocated to making decisions in the business. There's certain time allocated to delegating and teaching other people how to do the work. And then there's a certain amount of time, which as an entrepreneur and really as a CEO, there's a certain amount of time that needs to be dedicated to designing. Because what happens so often is you get so caught up in the day-to-day operations and just running your business, and it feels like you're doing a lot of stuff because you're doing stuff. And so you can get caught up into that. And even though it feels like you're doing a lot of stuff, and you could very well be working 12, 16-hour days every single day, and it's like, man, I'm doing everything that I possibly can to run this business, to grow this business. But if you don't take the time to take a step back and to see the bigger picture, then you could very well just be doing a bunch of shit, and what I like to call creating a lot of motion, but you're not actually moving forward where you want to be. So being able to take a step back and design the business is where the real work comes in. And paradoxically, it seems like you're not doing anything, but it's really the most important work that you can do. And it's really just thinking. And that's like literally at the highest level of entrepreneurship. That's what we get paid to do. We get paid to think, and we get paid to design things. And so that's what we're going to do right now. With my little introduction there, I'm just going to walk you through this process. So I don't know how this is going to turn out. I'm just kind of winging this, but either way, I feel like there will be some value here just to kind of see my thought processes and kind of the things that I'm going through. And it actually helps me because I'm vocalizing this thought process, which helps me to process the thinking of it. So I've got my notebook here. So if I keep looking down, I'm taking notes. So we're going to write the date in here. So this is the 20th. And I would invite you, I have a notebook that is just dedicated to like design work, to this kind of work, and like keeping track of the type of stuff that I'm doing on the back end and like the big picture stuff. So really, I guess the first place to start here is just to go back to the 40,000 foot view and just to see the big picture of what's going on. Because where I'm at right now personally, and as far as the business goes, is there's quite a number of different pieces. And part of what happened last year, this is 2024 when I'm recording this, I'm talking about 2023. Part of what happened last year was I started to gain some traction in the business and really with my own personal development as an entrepreneur. And I essentially created this system where I was doing everything. And I started these multiple different businesses all at once because I saw the bigger picture of how I saw all these pieces fit together. But the problem was I was essentially building multiple businesses all at once. And that in itself isn't so much of an issue. The issue became that I was doing all the work of all of the businesses all by myself. Well, I wouldn't say all by myself. I have help. Taylor, my girlfriend, she helps out a lot. And then TJ, one of my other kind of business partners, he helps out a lot. But a lot of it, I take on it for myself as myself. And that was part of the challenge, is like being able to actually see what was going on so that I can make decisions and delegate things to other people and provide clear direction. So that was last year. And so now this year, as I've grown and as my thinking has shifted, it's moving more into this space of taking what seemed like all these different pieces and creating it into just one streamlined system that encompasses all of the different pieces. So in my mind's eye, instead of like having all these puzzle pieces just scattered all around and like trying to work on this one, work on that one, work on that one, work on that one. And, I had systems that connected all of these things, but they were still separate. And so now it's like, okay, how do we take all of that and create one thing? And so part of that process is to look at the big picture of, okay, what is the ultimate goal here? Because that's one of the first questions you got to ask yourself. Like, what is the ultimate vision? Because again, if you get stuck on the ground level and you can just get wrapped back up in the day to day, and you may not actually be moving towards your destination. Just like, if you don't know where you're going, any road's going to take you there, and you can just be doing a lot of motion, but not actually moving where you want to go. So you got to know where you want to go, and you got to know why you want to get there. And so part of the big vision, and I would say like the big vision, is to create a community. And again, when looking at this big vision, for me personally, I like to leave room for the unknown. I've been through and I've studied a lot about like manifestation and dream manifestation and really just goal achievement. And there's a lot of work to get very specific on what you want. And I've been through that, but I find that if I get too overly specific, I can start to pigeonhole myself and start to get too involved in exactly how I think things should look, and therefore don't really leave room for allowing things to unfold a lot of times in a better way than I could have previously imagined. So when I look at the big picture, I see a community. I see all of these different pieces, when it comes to taking care of your body, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like the kind of the tagline of Optimal Evolution, which has kind of become this like the flagship company. The tagline is helping you optimize helping you realize your full potential by optimizing your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So this really comes down to realizing your full potential. That's kind of like the big promise. And the way that we do it is we help you to optimize your health and optimize your health in such a way through this holistic approach that you are able to realize all that you have the potential to be physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So part of that bigger promise, part of that bigger picture is having a community. And again, this can look like a kind of like a compound situation where there's kind of this, physical area, this physical place where all of these different things are at. Like, for instance, having the gym and being able to train your physical body, and then having like a restaurant where you're able to fuel your body and connect with food at a deeper level. And through the extension of that, then being able to connect back to the community and give your money to local farmers and people that are doing the best to be stewards of the land, and essentially creating this self-sustaining ecosystem to where ultimately, if we had to, we don't have to go anywhere else, because everything that we need to thrive is already embedded within the ecosystem, and the systems are created in such a way that they are anti-fragile, meaning that instead of the more that they get used, the more that they break down, like entropy, it's the more that they get used, the better they get, because there's self-feedback systems within all of it. And my apologies for those watching. If you are watching this video might cut off, but we are going, because my battery's dying on the camera here. But we're just going to keep rolling on this because we're in a nice flow right now. We're going to keep going. So either way, that's the big picture. And so already, what comes to my mind is the gym that we're in right now is actually a part of this like massive building that has multiple different kinds of companies in it, but there's still so much untapped potential within that building. And so how do we take what we already have and one, just make it the best that it can be, and then do it in such a way where we're also taking into account the potential that is already there. So I'm just going to write down community. So that's the big picture, community. Okay. And this could also look like, and the way in which we design the community is doing it in such a way that we can also we create systems, like the process of building the community in a sense turns into a business in itself, because we can systematize the process of that and then be able to teach other people how to do it so they can build their own communities, so that we can create this foundation and really do it at a grassroots level. Because so much of what we think of as change is like kind of like this top down approach where it's like, oh, these people in the up there's, the upper echelons, the governments and the agencies and the bureaucratic systems, all those things. It's like, okay, well, we got to convince these people to make these decisions to then trickle down and help us out down here. But rather, why don't we use the resources that we already have and that is already all around us, the abundance that we are surrounded by, that we just need to learn how to tap into? Why don't we take all of that and then build the system that can then work its way up? And matter of fact, why don't we change this whole concept of even having a hierarchy to I studied Gene Keys, and they talk about this concept of moving from a hierarchy, which is, like what it sounds like, a pyramid, to a hierarchy, which is basically like a more circle approach, to a synarchy, which is more of like a spider web, where like every piece, like it's holographic. So every piece has connection and has access to every other piece. And that's what we want to create. So we've got a community. We've already got a gym. That part is already established. And so we need to still continue to optimize that place and make it better and better. Battery's gone. So we need to continue to optimize that place. All right, so gym, restaurant. And when I say restaurant, it's not necessarily like a like that's all it is just a restaurant, but also a place that is a stewardship of the land, really, of fueling yourself, like physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Let's see here. So gym, restaurant, and so a lecture. So we need places to learn. So teaching, lecture, teaching. So and kind of like a library of sorts, which this is where too we can look in the community, and there's already within our established community. It's not like we have to reinvent things. We can also make connections with things that are already established. It doesn't have to be this like kind of one for all situation. Like it's the whole point of creating this network so that everyone is able to benefit from everyone else. So it's not like this competitive atmosphere. It's a cooperative atmosphere. And so like a library, a place of learning, a place like a studio, a place to do art, essentially, studio art. And I mean, really, and obviously, living, optimizing living spaces, providing opportunities, providing education for people that may not necessarily have access. And this is where we start thinking, like, at least for me with business wise, we start thinking beyond money itself. Because, this so many of the decisions that we make are founded upon things that we kind of take for granted. Like the whole system of money and like our current economical and socio-political, military industrial complex. And I would even add fucking pharmaceutical complex And so much of, we all these systems that are already in place, when we think about things, we tend to think from a place of our current situation, and therefore we kind of close ourselves off to potential opportunity. So I want to think in terms of like ideals, and thinking in terms of ideals, and then reverse engineering back to like where we're at right now in the practical and the realistic, and marrying the two. Because in my belief, there's always a potential, and you just have to learn how to ask yourself the right questions to realize that potential. So the right question isn't so much how do we just make a shit ton of money, and yes, that may very well be part of it and a product of it. But for me, the question is more so, one, how do we create systems that don't require money anymore? How do we tap into the infinite abundance that is already right here, right now, in this present moment? Because right here and right now is all there ever is. And then two, how do we create things in such a way to which it all feeds on itself? It's this self-sustaining, self-regenerative, self-healing ecosystem. And even if you look at, if you ever heard of like earth ships, or like food forest, like, and even if you just go out in nature, like nature is such, and that, like, literally we talk about nature as if we're separate from it, but that is, we are earth. We're not separate from earth. It's not humans and then nature. It's like, it's nature, and it's what we are. And therefore, all the wisdom that is already embedded within that which we kind of have made ourselves separate from, or we've given ourselves the idea of separation from, we can look to for wisdom, because it is us. If you go into a forest that has been unadulterated, that has been untouched, there you can witness how nature creates all of these systems inherently, where everything is feeding off everything else. And if you just leave nature alone, and it finds a way to figure itself out, it may take some of and even an extended period of what we label as time, but really it's doing what it knows how to do. And nature isn't in a rush to try to get anywhere, because nature is just being nature. Just in the same way, like, you don't need to teach a tree how to be a tree. You don't need to teach a bird how to be a bird. It's just in their nature. In the same way with us humans, paradoxically, the way of our evolution is intermingled with the involution. So it's like evolution is kind of this physical matter reaching towards spirit, and involution is spirit reaching down into the physical matter. So both things are happening simultaneously. I mean, hell, that's why we are a product of nature, because we are essentially nature's senses. Like, we are nature's logical intelligence that is helping it come to know itself. We are God going through this process of evolution to know what God is at an experiential level, which is just our beingness. So fundamentally, as much as we value education and learning things, our ultimate potential is already inherently embedded within us, because it is us. We are it. Everything that you are trying to be, you already are. And I know these things might kind of like go over some people's heads, but this is the truth that I am speaking from my heart. And the paradox is, like, even trying to speak about these things, you miss the point. So even trying to put language to these things, you miss the point. Okay, so let's get back on track here. So we've got living spaces, and we need to be in harmony with nature. Okay. So we need to utilize the systems that are already inherent to build all of this upon. And again, I'm talking about like ideals and 40,000 foot view, but the goal is we need to then reverse engineer that back to where we are now. And so sometimes you might find like my thinking kind of goes all over the place because I'm kind of moving back and forth between like ideal, realistic, ideal, practical, and they marry each other because it is really just one and the same thing. It's more of a spectrum. Okay. So currently we've got optimal evolution. Okay. And optimal evolution, as I said, is kind of like the main thing. So currently through optimal evolution, we offer coaching and we specialize in working with athletes. And from a business perspective, it is helpful to, at least when you're starting, to just really focus on one kind of customer and serve that customer to the highest possible level. And so right now we offer coaching and programming. But the only, right now, optimal evolution, we're growing. And, by growing, I mean, we're becoming more profitable because I use a system I learned from Mike Michalowicz as profit first. So you profit first and then you let everything else come after that. So we're profitable from day one. Well, it hasn't been day one, but since we started implementing, now we're profitable. What do you know? So the only, so this is like AC/DC. So there's different things that you want to measure. So attract, convert, deliver, and collect. Which is, again, you can create different measurements around these things of how you want to do that. Like we measure the amount of prospects we meet with each week. We measure the conversion rate of those prospects into clients. We measure the we measure the churn rate. So how many people are leaving, which tells us how well we are actually delivering on the service. And then we measure the average revenue per client. Right now it's like just per week. And so one of our numbers, and we have goals for each one of those numbers. And one of the kind of the lowest number on that is the average amount of money that a customer is spending with us. And so obviously we can raise the prices, or we can extend our services to basically start to tap into different wallets for people. And so part of that, and this starts to integrate the different things. So like looking at the restaurant, I like to break things down into like, what can I do today? And so part of the restaurant, one of my ideas is to kind of host team meals. And this can be a free service. It can be an added service. And we can also do like meal prepping. Because again, we're always looking at, okay, what do I want people to have? And what do people need? But also, what do they want? Because if you're trying to give shit to people that they don't want, they're not going to buy it from you. They're not going to want to exchange value to receive that. So it needs to be things that are valuable. And sometimes this is just as simple as like asking people, like, what do you want? And you can look at your best clients, the people that you like. Mike Michalowicz, because again, I've been studying him a lot recently. He talks about how like the kind of the desert island test. So it's like, who would you want to bring with you if you were stranded on a desert? You're stranded on a desert or an island. Who would you want to be with you? So again, and looking at that from the lens of like the clients that you work with, like who do you get excited to work with, and who's like you don't want to work with, you're cringe, or you feel like frustrated or whatever the kind of way that you associate with that client. And either way, looking at your best clients and seeing how you can even better serve them because they're your best clients. And so, what comes to mind is, okay, you need some meal prep. And that's something that we've already done. The only issue is, again, instead of creating this separate thing, how do we do it so that it's streamlined of the same thing? So meal prep service, and this can, we have a family dinner or team dinner every week where we cook and we deliver the rest to our clients. And again, I'm kind of thinking out loud, so sorry, not sorry if this doesn't always make sense. Deliver the rest. So essentially we have a dinner and we do it every week at a regular time. And then we make enough, and we can take orders beforehand, and we get enough food and we cook enough food to feed ourselves as well as feed and have enough for other people that we're serving. So deliver the rest. So that would likely be like we have to figure out like what time during the week would work best for everyone. I personally rather not do these things on a time, one of my off times during the week. So I have to figure out what time that would be, that would work for everyone. All right. Okay. So Optimal Evolution, and part of this is like a nonprofit. And this, again, this is, I call this Life Foundation, which is a nonprofit that will kind of funnel a lot of our community service initiatives through. And so this is building houses, building ecosystems, creating different co-ops, things of that nature, and really connecting the community and giving back to the community. And so that can be even within Optimal Evolution. It's different youth programs. Okay. Different initiatives like that can be an extension of Life Foundation, which is really just life, or Optimal Evolution. All right. And now, so I've got my music, okay. And the music for me is obviously my own self-expression, but it also, for me, it's like a marketing campaign, because in my idea, at least, is that is how I get myself out there in the best way. Because I'm not, for me, social media is something that I want to leverage, but it's not something that I care to really be consistently engaged with. And obviously I do these podcasts to share and to teach. So music, podcast. So I need someone, or I need some kind of system. I need some help to take this stuff that I'm doing, like this podcast. Because again, I have had to make the decision, which has been hard for me at times, but I've had to make the decision to be disciplined in not taking on things that aren't aligned with my core fundamental principles. Because I've essentially identified the few key things for me to focus on, like doing this right now, like shit that only I can do, and then leveraging and delegating all the other things. So one of the challenges, and the part of the reason I did this too, is because it helped me easily identify where the bottlenecks are. And so for me right now, one of them is, okay, I've been creating a shit ton of content, but there's currently no means to actually get it out there. And so even this podcast, this may never get aired. I don't know, because I obviously can easily do the work, edit it, clean it up, upload it, write the description, make sure people hear about it. I can do all that. I'm very well capable. And that's been my issue. And again, a lot of entrepreneurs is we know that we can do something. And because we know that we can do something, we decide that we must do something. But just because you can do something doesn't mean that that is what you should be doing, especially if doing that thing takes you away. Like, for instance, when I was really active on social media and it was just me, I was spending multiple hours during the day posting shit and creating content, like doing all these things, editing videos. And it was taking time away from me doing the things that were really moving the needle. Because there's the 80-20 rule. Usually things that are the things that create 80% of the progress is usually only 20% of the things that you're doing. 20% of the work creates 80% of the results. So if you can identify what that 20% is, then you just double down on that stuff. And that'll give you 80% of the results. And the rest of it, you can create systems around, you can delegate. And again, this is your job. This is what you're here to do. Like this work that we're doing right now, this is the work of being an entrepreneur. Okay? So I got music, marketing, podcast, education through the podcast, as well as since I video this, it also gives me a bunch of clips and a YouTube and all that good stuff, as well as like music videos and stuff. And the music, like music, there's a huge opportunity there that and it's another one of those things. A lot of these things, like it's easy to brush off because it seems like we confuse important with urgent. And so things that feel urgent, and a lot of times it's a false sense of urgency. It's just stuff that we make feel urgent so that we can feel important to do it. And so even though something may be urgent doesn't necessarily mean it's important. Because a lot of times the things that are the most important, they're really not that urgent, but they are the most important. And so it's like prioritizing those things and purposefully not allowing things that just feel urgent to take precedence over the things that are actually important. All right, so okay, and now we're gonna make another hop and a skip and a jump here over to SLSP, which is Saucony Lake Sports Performance. So this is another business that I am a part of, although I haven't done much with it yet. But I'm a part of this business, and the challenge is that it's growing and that there's a lot of demand, but there's not people to actually do the work. And it's the owner, the current owner, he's already got his plate full of all the other things that he does. So it's like hard to sustain it. And so having to take that on, and the same thing for me, it's like, it's not something that I necessarily want to take on. But it is something that I want to clockwork. It's something that I want to create systems around. So that's a big one. And then again, taking all these things that seem like separate things and making it into one thing. Saucony Lake Sports Performance. So that's a big question. So it's like the question is, how do we maximize the service while minimizing man hours, at least to start? So if we do a few group sessions per week, and what if, we could invite people to come to East Race Muscle. That is a little bit of a hike for some people, but if you really want it, that would be the place to go. Okay. Invite to ERM. So what if we did, that could work because there's already demand there. So what if we did one session per week at East Race Muscle, and therefore I could hire TJ or another coach. So we did one session a week, East Race Muscle, then we did one session, because all we need is, if we did 2 sessions per week, and maybe we'll just do 6-week camps. So do 6-week camps. All right. All right, all right. So we're getting somewhere here, okay? And so honestly, like I'm kind of getting in the flow with my thinking process, and um, for the sake of the listeners, because it seems like there's just going to be more and more silence and more seemingly unrelated utterances from things, and so I'm going to make the decision to kind of, we made some good headway, and I believe that you have kind of, the listener, you have gotten a taste of kind of the thought process of how to go about these things. And so I want to take the reins here and kind of go into an even deeper process within myself, because like I said, I think we're making some headway here, and I want to finish this out, because this is important work for me. Okay? So, I'm going to leave you here. Again, I hope this was valuable for you. And I really enjoy sharing this. And this is the kind of work, if you want to get deeper into this stuff, and if you want to kind of work with me personally, you do have that option to where, this is through my life magic, where we can take a deeper dive in all of this stuff and really look at your life as a whole, business being a big part of that, and help to create all these systems around that. So I'm doing this work for myself, obviously, and obviously for other people. But part of my mission too is to be able to give back, obviously. So with that, without further ado, I'm going to leave you here. I'm going to continue on this work, and if I've done my job well, you will continue to see the fruits of that work come to fruition with the seeds that are being planted literally right now. I mean, hell, this might be one of those episodes where it's like we look back a year from now and it's like, oh shit, all these things that I was talking about, they're here now, which is pretty cool. So I'm glad that I got to share this and document this. And thanks for tuning in, as always. I really appreciate you, whoever you are, wherever you are. Like, I love you, and I mean that with my whole heart, and I hope you can feel that. So without further ado, I hope you have an amazing day, and you guessed it right, baby. The journey is the way. I'll talk to you real soon now. Peace.